please feel free to move around a little bit if it's helps you body be at ease or easier to see or hear or anything. There's a few seats and whatnot. So this morning I'd like to speak a little bit about persimmons. And it's a little early. If you like persimmons, maybe you have spied a tree or two, and they're mostly green right now, maybe a little bit of pale yellow, and they'll start to ripen over the next couple months, and they'll turn very bright orange color. And there aren't so many persimmons here in Eugene, although they grow very well here. In East Asia, I'm most familiar with Japan. Persimmons there's a lot of persimmons, and they occupy a really special place in the heart, the imagination of Japanese people. One of the things that's so wonderful about them is that they hang on the branches, if the squirrels don't eat them, until the leaves all drop. So there's beautiful, the aesthetic of snow on the ground and everything sleeping, all the trees and bushes in their sleeping mode, and these bright orange fruit hanging from the tree. There's something, it's beyond just poetic. It's like something that's speaking to our heart in that scenery about how things can be so barren and so bright at the same time. So it's a very common kind of theme of painting, Chinese style ink painting, lots and lots of persimmons. A good chance to use orange. When you get a chance to just let orange come through you. And like I said, so it's a little bit early. The persimmon tree that's here in front of the Abbot's hut, they're nice and green, and they will turn red again. Hopefully, the squirrels don't eat all of them. But there's another facet of these persimmons that's really interesting and shows up within Buddhist teaching a lot. One thing I love about being a human and being a Buddhist human is that Buddhism has this quality of trying to, or not just trying to, but actually bringing in the images that stir us from our broader life and finding the principle in them, or finding a principle in them that tells us about how it is to live fully this opportunity of a human life. And so persimmons are no different than that. And one of these qualities of a persimmon is that there's two kinds. There's wild persimmons and there's tamed persimmons. And almost everything you will see in Eugene, at least, is a tamed persimmon. So what I mean by tamed persimmon, they're also referred to as sweet persimmons. You can just take them off the tree when they're red and peel them and eat them, and they're delicious. They're a little weird if you're not used to a persimmon. They have a taste like no other fruit has. It's very kind of this kind of a taste. Like a passion fruit, right? It's kind of like, it's passion, and it has this kind of, and they're so orange that you feel like when you bite into it, it's just going to zing you, but it doesn't. It kind of is like sweet, depth, interesting kind of a flavor. So those are the ones that are they're squat. These are the sweet ones. They're like, if you've seen a persimmon in the store, or you just eat one, that's probably what you've seen. They're really beautiful shape and little green top. But wild persimmons, they tend to be longer, and these grow naturally in Japan. So you see them if you're in the mountains or any place like that. They're long and narrow, and they kind of come to a point on the bottom. And if you pick one of those and you bite into it, you will go, it's so astringent. Like, it's the definition of astringency. It's just unbelievable. And nothing will tell you that that's what it's going to be like. It doesn't smell, like some things, like if you had something that wasn't ripe and you smell it and you're like, oh, okay, maybe not. There's nothing. Everything will tell you, please bite into me, just like a sweet persimmon. And you bite into it, and then it's really horrific. And so the sweet persimmon and the wild or the astringent persimmon starts to show up in Buddhist teaching, particularly in Japan. Part of the reason I'm talking about this now is I'm going to start a lecture series this Thursday on a text called Jiju Zanmai, which is written by a monk named Menzan. He lived in the 1700s, and he was one of the big kind of like a revivalist of this particular school of Buddhism in Japan. And he was part of a number of prominent teachers at that time who set a kind of course for Soto Zen Buddhism, which we're still living out today. And a really amazing mind and life. He was unbelievable number of books, like I think it's like 150 or something like that. Almost all of them are on monastic regulations. I mean, he was a monastic, and he served large communities of monastics. And so, but a number of them are more about teachings in the sense of what we would normally think about as a teaching. And monastic regulations a teaching, but it's not one that most of us live in all the time. And this particular text was written for all kinds of people. He taught from this it wasn't reserved for the monastic community. In fact, it was originally written for a group of lay people that he was teaching. Which a lot of people think, like, oh, okay, that means it won't be too hard. It's like very challenging, but amazing. And in this, he uses this image of the persimmon. And I feel like it's part of his central point in this text about what is the nature of practice, what is the nature of the Buddha Dharma, and what the tradition has to offer us, and how is it that we misunderstand it. So in this text, again, he's a revivalist, a kind of reformer in a way, saying, look, we've misunderstood the tradition. We've come to think that the tradition is about getting rid of astringency. And so he uses this image, and I'll just read a short quote from the text. He says, for example, astringent persimmons become very sweet after they have been dried. This is true. If we try to squeeze out the astringency, the persimmons will never become sweet. Thus, the astringency of 3 poisons becomes the sweetness of 3 virtues. The Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas cannot produce the sweetness of the 3 virtues because they try to squeeze out the astringency of the 3 poisonous minds. So there's some technical things going on in this, which we'll talk about in the lectures. But if we just focus on the first part, he's saying, life is like a persimmon, not like a tamed persimmon, like a wild persimmon. And when you bite into it, you get a surprise. And he said there's different ways we could deal with this. A lot of the ways we've come to understand practice is as a way to try to squeeze the astringency out of the persimmon. And he's saying that's possible. Actually, you can. Arhats and Pratyekabuddhas do that. Arhats are beings that work to cool all the flames of a human life and become completely detached within living. And actually, that is a robust and celebrated path within the Buddha Dharma. But here Menzan says they can't produce the 3 virtues because they just get rid of the poison. They get rid of the poison of greed, hate, and delusion, and it can never transform. It can't transform into generosity and loving kindness or tender care. That's another words for loving kindness, tender care and wisdom. They can become a kind of important travelers on the way, but they cut off that opportunity. And a Pratyekabuddha is a little bit like an Arhat. They're Buddhas, but they're loners. They wake up all by themselves. And he said they can't really produce those virtues because that shared mind of greed, hate, and delusion is something that they abhor. They try to get rid of. So this wild persimmon, I love thinking of life as like a wild persimmon. Orange. It's so magnetizing too, right? Don't you feel like, I was thinking this morning while we were sitting in Zazen, I was like, I think for lunch, I'm going to make an egg sandwich. It was so compelling. That's how life is, right? It's like, what am I going to do? There's a hunger, and I don't want to feed it. And that's great, you know, I think that's a pretty good choice. I'm going to toast the bread, by the way. Many of those things figured out. I haven't quite decided yet if it's a boiled egg that gets turned into egg salad or it's a fried egg, but I'm sure that will come in time. But think about your life. It's like that, right? It's like, what's the next thing? It's so compelling. It's orange. It's bright orange. It captures your attention. It invites you to bite. It says, what do you want to do? What's next? Right? And so biting into this wild persimmon, that's how life is. And actually, sometimes the wild persimmons are sweet if you hit them at the right time. He says if you dry the persimmon, it becomes sweet. That's true, and what a lot of people do is they pick them. I used to do this when I lived in Japan, and it's also a very beautiful aesthetic. You take the persimmons and you peel them, but when you pick them, you leave a little stem, and then you tie them on ropes and you hang them underneath the eaves of your house. And in Japan in the winter, it tends to be very dry. Here, if you did that, they rot. Right? Okay, so you have to wipe them with like alcohol, like a vodka or something like that on a regular basis to keep the mold from growing, and you can get them to dry, but it's a lot of work. But there, you string them up, and because it's so dry, they dry out and they become sweet. But the other thing you can do is just watch the tree, and when you watch the tree, watch the birds, because the birds know this. You never see the bird pecking on a astringent one. They know. They get kind of translucent and gooey, and you can pick them, and they're like jelly in a skin of a fruit, and they're so sweet. It's just so amazing. Now I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, okay. So you can wait for they can dry on the tree. That's a possibility, or you can dry them, and then people will dry them until they get kind of hard, and then you pack them in rice straw, and then you can keep them. If you think about it now, you just go over to Capella and buy an apple, right? You know, it's like, okay, that's how we live. But we have forgotten about the sweetness of fruit because it's available to us all the time. But in old, more time before, not that long ago, you would learn to preserve these things. So when I was living in Japan, my grandma, my wife's mother's side, she would get the straw for us, and she would help us pack them so that we could eat them throughout the winter. It's like a treat, you know, like on a New Year's morning to take out a persimmon that you've dried, you know, to eat that. So I think part of the point that Menzon's making here is it's very natural for us to want to remove the astringency. It's actually even correct to want to remove the astringency. You don't want to eat a not ripe wild persimmon. It will only be a practice of pain and suffering. So our inclination to say something needs to happen is a good inclination. The mistake we make is that we want to get rid of the astringency, which causes the astringency in the first place from a Buddhist perspective. So sometimes when talking about practice, I like to talk about, this is just an image or the fancy term heuristic. It's like a conceptual model that helps you understand something, but the model itself is just, that's all it is, right? It's just kind of a conceptual way to think about something. So this heuristic is you could think about like a triangle that's pointed up, or like a pyramid. If you think at the very top of it, the tip of it, we can think of that as being our experience. You bite into the persimmon and you feel this astringency and maybe the sweetness along with it. So that's in the level of experience. What happens is when we feel some astringency or bitterness of life, we want to get rid of it. Oftentimes what we do is then on the next layer down, we take up the practice of trying to guard ourselves against the astringency, or to get rid of the difficulty, or to get rid of the states of mind that cause us grief, the unsettled quality of our heart, which is oftentimes why we're coming to Buddhism in the first place, is because we know I don't have peace of mind. And without peace of mind, everything doesn't really scratch the itch. And so I'm looking for that peace of mind. And in looking for that peace of mind, I say, oh, I don't have a peaceful mind. I need to get rid of that unpeacefulness. And we just stir up the very problem that creates the lack of peace of mind in the first place. I'm trying to get this and get rid of that, get this and get rid of that, pull the things I want closer to me, push the things I don't want farther away from me, and pretend like that could actually work. Like I could keep the things I want over time and keep the things I don't want at bay. And that's the very thing that keeps our heart up in a turmoil. So this image of the persimmon is saying, wait a minute, respect the persimmon, respect the astringency, respect that it lures you in with the compelling quality of its vivid orange flesh. And of course you're going to bite into it. And of course there's going to be difficulty in that. And there's also going to be sweetness in that. So now what do? And he's saying, don't run. Don't reject the astringency. Don't pick up, if we take this to meditation practice, don't take up meditation practice as a way to banish your demons.
What?
Banish your demons. That idea, like you're going to sit zazen, you're going to get rid of all the bad stuff about yourself and you're going to get good stuff. That's a misunderstanding. And we have very sophisticated spiritual technology to help you do that banishing, right? And they are powerful. But what Menzon says here is they're not going to lead to what you want. Right? And this is his very sharp criticism of the way that most of us take up meditation. If we look at our heart in a deeper sense, we'll find that kind of grasping that's there. But then Menzon's he's just like a gentle grandmother. He says, of course that's there. That's part of the astringency. Don't hate that either. Don't make that your enemy. Don't make your desire for transformation the enemy, but don't rely on the little lie that it tells you. The lie that you can cut off the difficult things and push them away and just keep the sweet fruit. So this is Menzon's approach to teaching Zazen. There's an aspect to this that I'm really, very aware of in this particular time. I've just come back from some long travels, and part of the travels were I was in Peru for 3 weeks. It was really fantastic. I'm sure some of the stories from that will make their way into talks and things that I give, and I'm excited to talk with people about who are interested or have been to Peru before and share some stories and things. But this has happened to me before, and I've visited Mexico a couple times, and then I go to Japan very often. And these 3 places are kind of the places I've been before. But when I come back to the US, I always have this experience, and very strong I had this experience coming back from Peru. We are isolated. And I don't mean isolated just like I'm in my house, not talking with other people very often, although that's very true. All the streaming services that you need to keep yourself entertained, et cetera, et cetera. But we are just in our day-to-day living very self-contained. And when I come back from Japan, or this time being in Peru, coming back, you can just feel it. And maybe those of you who have traveled to other places before, when you come back, you can feel there's this kind of rigidity. It's like when people are walking around, like there's this bubble around them. The bubble's not like a nice, soft, fluffy bubble. It's like a kind of rigid,
Don't mess with me.
Don't mess with me. But it's also fragile. And so people are like trying to keep it up like all the time. I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about us here, okay? This is a kind of dis-ease. It's a kind of lack of ease within our culture overall. And one of the things I so appreciated in Peru is that there's this constant reciprocity that's just like the fabric of how people are communicating. And sometimes it's super intense, like Lima. So Lima's the capital of Peru. I didn't know that till I was going to go. Now I knew it. I thought, oh yeah, it's a big city. I thought big city meant like, 1 million people. Well, it's like 10 million people. It's a big city, and it is wild. And one of the really wild things to do, if you get sleepy or get a little bit bored, you just take a taxi somewhere. And it is like a full onslaught. People have told me they like travel Southeast Asia like that and other places, but I haven't traveled those places, so I don't know. This is my first experience of it. And the taxi drivers are so fun and so wild and so intense. And they're honking all the time. There's just a honking going on all the time. And so the first few days, I was like, wow. And I always sat in the front seat because there was 4 of us. And so there was like, you know, especially my size, we don't fit 4 in the back. So I was always sitting in the front. So that's like, whoa, you know, it's like being on the front car of the roller coaster. So we're going everywhere. And at first, you know, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm glad I practice meditation. I can kind of hang out. The car's coming straight at us. That's just the way it works. You have to put yourself where you want to go. You don't wait for anyone to be kind. You just put yourself in hunt. And then after a couple of days, it started feeling to me like we're elephants just through the streets. Like everyone, it's not that people are honking like, get out of the way, you're in my space. That's not what the honks meant. That's what they mean here. And that's why at first they're so kind of unsettling. Because a honk means like you have done something wrong, and I know it because my bubble's right here, and you found my bubble. But it's not like that. Like, I'm an elephant, and everyone's just going, and it's like I'm here. That's what the honking means. I'm here. I'm not. This is not my edge that's way out here that I'm going to kindly ask you to stay on the other side of because I don't want you to touch my gooey insides because you know that would be threatening, right? It's not that. It's just like, I'm here. And then everyone's going. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of problems with that, but the reciprocity in it was great. The way people talk, I don't understand Spanish, so it was really fun because you just pick up the like cadence and the way that people are with each other. And then I would ask my student there, many of you know Enyu Arari, who spent time here. And she was taking us around everywhere. And I would say, so was that like an argument? And she'd say, oh, no. I'd say, what were you talking about? And she said, well, he was just full of shit. I didn't mean it was an argument. She was like, no, it wasn't an argument. We were just discussing it. You know, it was really fun, you know, to be kind of in that. But everywhere I went, I felt this kind of really, really simple reciprocity that touched down into people's hearts, you know, really directly. The reason I bring this up is that I think recognizing this about the, generally speaking, the milieu that we are in, you're sitting here today, you're part of that soup and you have your own version of it and the way that it affects you and the way you enact it, etc. Really important to recognize that because we can carry that into practice so easily. And it's very strong within Western Buddhism, the kind of sense like, I'm going to meditate my way into being wise and kind and smart and all these sort of things, as if it's something you can do. Part of what Menzon's teaching is he's saying, it's not something that doesn't involve you, it totally involves you. But this heart, okay, this is the thing that underlies the experience and then the practice or the posture we take is the heart. And that heart isn't yours. It appears as you. You know yourself, just like those taxis, you know, belting out their horns like elephants. I'm here. Every one of us has that. I'm here. But that I'm here is not a you that you can grasp. It's not a you that you can protect. It's not a you that you can claim, right? Although you show up as it. And it's so easy for us to think, oh, I'm the me and I'm going to do it. And it's just about my effort, etc., etc. So Menzon says, you know, he reminds us, we are all of the illumination of the Buddha's awakening. Buddha Shakyamuni, his great awakening underneath the Bodhi tree, saw the morning star and exclaimed, I, the great earth, and all beings, at the same time, attain to the way. Attaining to the way in this case means are awakened. That's a quality of a Buddha. They recognize that there's no separation in their awakening. This is different than the Pratyeka Buddha and the Arhat. This is different than the part of us that wants to dry up the difficulties, right? Or the one that wants to just be the solitary, be okay in our solitariness. Both are which are possible to a degree. But the Buddha recognizes that the awakening is not their own. And this is good news. All living beings, each and every one, has the Buddha nature. These are the first lines of the Parinirvana Sutra, the central sutras of the Mahayana tradition. All living beings, each and every one, have the Buddha nature, have the illumination of the Buddha's awakening. Dogen Zenji, he changes this a little bit, and he says, well, he changes the way to read it from the typical one, which is great because it's written in Chinese, and Chinese is great because it holds a lot of ambiguity. So sometimes we need to hear that message. Each and every one of us has the Buddha nature. But Dogen tends to emphasize, he says, all living beings entirely are Buddha nature. That's a little bit different. It's not like I have the Buddha nature, thank you, I'm going to go back to my castle and hang out by myself and try to find that Buddha nature. He's saying, no, it's not something you have. You entirely are it. And the entirely are-ness of your Buddha nature is expressed through life, which is in reciprocity with all things. So, back to the persimmon. What would it be to respect the whole person and to know that there's a deep truth in this persimmon, which includes sweetness and astringency? And how could the difficulties of my life become truer if I didn't cut them off from the wholeness of my life? The difficulties becoming truer are really important because as we resist the difficulties, we undercut them, we try to make them untrue. They can't teach us. So in this approach to meditation, we don't say, how do I get past or over or around the difficulties? We say, how do I appreciate the wholeness? Now, oftentimes in our life, things are so messed up that we're just caught up in the astringency and we're just anyway, I don't know, just twisting it up tighter and tighter and tighter. So in that case, oftentimes what meditation looks like is like, let's stop doing that. Here's some techniques, but not because we're going to get rid of the difficulty, but because we want it to be able to flower, open up, and transform. To practice Zazen in this way, with this kind of understanding as the basis, it requires a different kind of risk than a good technique. And I don't have anything against good techniques. I quite like good techniques. And there's lots of them, within meditation, for example, that you can learn about. But if the fundamental alignment is through a good technique, you'll be limited simply by that good technique. And it might have some positive effects, but it sort of ends there. This Zazen that Dogen has transmitted through our lineages to us, and what Menzon is trying to remind us of is, we've got to come with something more on the line. We're going to let go of that shell in which it's back off. Because that shell, I don't know if you noticed, but it doesn't only keep other people from seeing your GUI centers, it keeps you from seeing it too. Right? Because you have to externalize yourself into that wall out here, and then your own orange heart can't really be tasted because you're out here. So this way, in some ways, we say is very gentle. It has to be. Because if it's not, you'll never be able to hold the thing in that way. It's like, you just can't. You can pick a persimmon that's astringent like that. You just go, it's no problem. The astringent that's gooey, if you do that, no way you hold it. It just squirts out everywhere. So that's the same thing with us. As the persimmon dries and the gooiness and the sweetness comes about, we'll have to use this gentleness to be able to care for it and to taste what is much sweeter than we imagined life could be. So I want to say that kind of risk is really worth it. Really, really worth it. And so, if you're sitting here in this assembly today, there's part of your heart that says, I want to live through that authenticity of my deep being. And I just want to say to you, that's completely possible. In fact, I'm quite sure you're doing it. But it can be hard to appreciate it. It can be hard to appreciate. So a lot of what we do in practice is coming together and practicing that way that we can be gentle together. Not gentle in the sense of indulgent, but gentle in the sense of holding something, keeping our focus on it, and walking in steadily and with that kind of tender care that I was bringing up. So this particular text, the Jiju Zammai, now I have explained it to you. There's no reason to know anything else about it. But if you would like to, please, Thursday evenings, the lecture series I think goes on for a couple months, and it's a lecture series, which means that it's like there's a whiteboard, and I'll draw things on that, and you could take notes if you want to. I'm saying that because I know some of you were here for the Thursday assemblies in the spring. In the springtime, the Thursday assemblies are really different. They're formal teachings, which are much more kind of Zen teachings with like very direct expressions, no explanation. Well, I don't know how you experience that. You experience it however you do, but it's very different than a lecture. So this is kind of a little bit different thing. Just to also remind you that there's a foundations class that's starting this Tuesday that will be taught by Jacqueline, and that's a wonderful thing. If you haven't studied much about the foundational teachings of Buddhism, like so powerful and beautiful, and the word enriching. So I encourage you that class is happening. There's a practice circle that Doku's running. I think that starts this Wednesday, right? And then later on in the term, there's some other classes and circles that are happening. So the website, we've been doing a little bit updating work on it the past couple of days, and it's getting a little more functional. So you can look there for things that you might be interested in. And of course, Sunday morning practice happens, and blah, blah, blah. We'll probably have a party at some point. Right. End of October, we have Segaki, the feeding the hungry ghosts, and we always have lunch together. Anyway, if there's any questions or comments. Hi.
Family members. Is it appropriate putting in a time out?
Yeah.
And see if you know it's there.
Right.
You know it's there.
Yeah.
So time out.
Yeah.
Is that appropriate?
So one of my favorite stories, I know I've told it a lot of times from the teaching seat, so many of you have heard it before, was an article I read in Tricycle a long time ago, it was maybe 20 years ago or something, and it was about practicing as a parent. And there was one woman who had written in, and she was talking about, she said, I have 2 young children, they were like toddlers, maybe like 2 and like 1.5 and 2.5, something like that.
It's so easy to think of her into adult.
Oh yeah. But she said, I've tried everything. She said, if I try to meditate, they just mob me, and there's just like no way past it. And she said, I've tried everything. I tried, like giving them treats and putting them on the other side of the room or whatever, all these sorts of things. And she said, finally, I got a playpen. And so I put them in a playpen. I gave them everything they wanted. And then I was sitting zazen, and she said, they freaked out. They just lost it. I couldn't do it. And so she said, the one thing that worked was, I got in the playpen and let them play in the room, and then it was no problem at all. And so she said, I found the way I can practice. For meditation. And she said, I get in the playpen and then I let them practice. Right. The reason I bring that up is I think probably rather than giving them the timeout, give yourself a timeout. And maybe that's the same thing, but the way that we frame it's a little bit different. Sometimes if we need that distance, the astringency is nowhere other than our own mind. But that's true of everything. And so what we can do is we can recognize that I'm completely involved. Whatever astringency I'm experiencing, it completely involves me. It's not located in them, right? But it doesn't mean it's just my fault or it's just me that's making it up. It means that I'm completely involved. There's a whole world that's involved, and I'm not separate from that world. Having said that, maybe what would be nice would be to just not talk for a little while. Just disconnect in terms of the practical things, because then you can find something truer about your connection. Words and gestures and communications, in a way, take away the deepest part of our communication. And then we get kind of all tight in that spot, and we need to feel down for the deeper communication. And then when we can feel that, then it's time we can come back up, and we can engage a conversation again, because we've reconnected with what's deeper.
So it says, and that's what I did. I
Yeah.
Don't call me.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
And digitally, it's
Yeah.
like you can't reach me anyway because I'm engaged.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm.
Yeah. And then feel for the deeper truth of what the communication is there. And my guess is that you'll be communicating with them in ways that are mysterious and not so easy to point out, like who said what, blah, 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 blah. And then when there's that's also a great place for healing to happen. And in that healing, then you can re-engage. And then oftentimes the re-engagement doesn't just look like gooiness. It might really look like, there's a boundary here, and I feel like you're not respecting it, right? I don't mean to say that you go down and you that deeper communication, and then you're just kind of the soft, warm light of waking up, and then you just give that to everybody, and everyone, is hugorama. It's like, sometimes it's a real hard line that helps you get through it. My dad, I have to tell you this about, when I say hugorama, I always think of my dad. My poor dad, he was an architect and a builder, and he built schools, which means he worked with educators his whole life. I'm an educator, worked in schools forever, and love my dad to death, but I can tell you the difference in mental framework, being an architect builder and an educator, is just totally different. So he had such a hard time. He'd go to all these meetings, and it was all about how people felt and how they, and he's like, I need to pour concrete on Monday. Where does the stuff go? So he had this whole collection of butterflies and rainbow pins that he would wear as a joke to himself when he would go to all the meetings and things, just to be able to kind of stay in the zone. So I grew up with a lot of that, receiving the suffering of my father, which then as an educator, I appreciated why he was so upset. Separate thing. Anything else? Uh-huh.
I've been experiencing a lot of gratitude in my life. I feel like it's been a great practice to feel connected to the world and enhance compassion. So great friends, beautiful weather, beautiful house, along with a natural sense of wanting to do right and being able to tap into that connection. And I feel like a lot of that gratitude is stuff that Benjamin owns, Benjamin's friends, Benjamin's sense of compassion, and understanding that billions of people in the world don't have those specific things. And so I'm wondering about, how do I expand my gratitude to include beings that don't have what I personally have?
Yeah. It's always this conundrum. And for me, I oftentimes think about it as the conundrum of family, but I think it can be a conundrum of just your life, whatever the shape your life is. And when I think about it as conundrum of family, I think about my daughters, and now my grandson, soon to be granddaughter. I love them so much. So much. And in that, I know that there's a problem. And the problem is, I can wrap my world around them and create a closed system. Many of the systems that we deal with are closed systems. If you think about a clock, for example, clock has all the gears and everything. It depends on being a closed system to continue functioning as a clock. But the thing that's kind of funny about it is there's actually no such thing as a closed system. You got to wind it, you have to put in a battery, you have to set it. There's all these things, but it kind of pretends like it's a closed system. And that's exactly what we do. We can pretend like something's a closed system, and that happens so easily, especially, it's nothing wrong. It's just the gratitude of the wonderfulness of my life, and you can feel that, but then it can just wrap into a closed system. So what I would encourage you to do is ask, how is it an open system? What is, in my case, the practice is, okay, I'm playing with Kai, he's 2, he's super fun. Kai's like he's like a placeholder for all 2-year-olds. He's a placeholder for the whole world. He's a placeholder for the whole universe. And so in whatever way I care about him, that's great. I should be. I'm his grandfather. I have a particular role to play in his life that you don't have or anyone else doesn't, only me. And so I need to do that fully. But can it be an open system? Can the way that I love him extend to the way that I love people who aren't him? Is the way that I care for him can extend to other things, and look for the way that that connects through. So that's a practice that I do really like purposefully. I remind myself of that, especially when I'm in that zone of being like, yeah, things are pretty good. Figs are ripening. Son's beautiful. I have a beautiful family, beautiful community. And that's, so I want you to notice how that's different than the guilt that we oftentimes carry for having that. Right? We say like, oh, well, I have this, but there's all these people who don't. What's wrong with me? I need to be more like edgy or upset or messed up or whatever because the world's messed up. I don't believe that. I think actually we can extend ourselves through, not because we know better or we're better than anything, but because our system is open. Whatever we have is reliant on the whole. Okay, maybe time for one more, if there is. Otherwise, we can eat cookies. Hi.
Space that we build around ourselves. How is what is a gentle way of deconstructing that balances this sense of separation? It's just
Yeah, Southern. And I won't just stop there. But the reason is because if we say, okay, I know that shell's kind of a problem, so I blow it up. The way we blow it up is with another shell. Like that, we just create another layer, not of reciprocity between ourselves and the world, but we kind of create another plane. And so we create another shell and then we blow that one up. And oftentimes we call that shell freedom, or we call it honesty, or we call it, like, I don't know, have you ever been in a relationship where you've decided foolishly that honesty meant that you say exactly what you're thinking whenever you're thinking it? like that kind of, it just becomes kind of weirdly destructive, and so what Zazen offers us is it says, no, don't break the shell. The shell's part of the persimmon. Right? There's a wholeness here. But how do I not stay transfixed on the shell? Because that's what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm trying to keep it up. So as I sit and I accept it, my capacity to feel the center begins to emerge. And as I can start feeling that center, that can be really confusing because it's not structured in the way that the shell's structured. The shell has a structure that I think I can rely on because it has clear lines, right? But this thing doesn't. It's like I don't know what it's gonna do. And as I become more deeply familiar with it, I can feel how it is touched by things continuously. Like I think it can't because I have a shell, right? But then I start to notice like, oh, actually it's reacting, it's interacting, it is in a reciprocal relationship with the world all the time. But I'm kind of pretending like it's not because I'm afraid. And then you can start working with the shell in a different way. And a different you can emerge. The confidence of your own emerging self can start to build from that place, which is different than I just have to get rid of the shell because I or because I think it would be freeing, or I know the kind of like pain of the constriction of it. So Zazen gives us a way to do this, like very directly. And as you're sitting, you have been sitting for a good chunk of time now, you can feel that, right? Feel this part of your heart that you can't feel when you're not sitting. And then it gives you the opportunity for different kinds of choices. Like, okay, I know that in this encounter, I'm feeling something, even though I don't know. Like, I'd much prefer if you would just stay on the other side of the wall. And I didn't need to feel anything. And you know that you are, and you can start making choices. How will I respond to it? How will I recognize our mutuality? And that's not easy. That's not easy to do. Just taking down the wall oftentimes invites the thing to just come and eat you. And that's not what you want, right? And that's not helpful. So you've got to find the way where you can connect in an appropriate way. And that's very tricky, but it's like an invitation to be in real, vibrant relationship with the world. And that's, you know, that's what our way provides us, which is very different than I get to check out and everything's good now. Yeah. But worth it. I will really tell you it's worth it.